be one of the good guys, and I'm holding out hope that there is a plan. So that's Q, right? Trust the plan. So I'm holding out hope that there is a plan.
Where's the evidence that he has actually been spearheading a battle against pedophiles around the world? Because he didn't talk about that really at all when he was in office.
Yeah, I think all you have to do to validate what I'm saying, or use another search engine, can't find on YouTube or in just searching on Google, but references to Trump talking about this is one of his main agendas. Like I said, you wouldn't know that from the mainstream media, the Mockingbird media, but you can find it out.
The truth is, President Trump rarely spoke out publicly about sex trafficking. And it certainly was not one of his main agendas. So why do QAnon followers see President Trump as a messiah? That's next.
Could be the calm before the storm.
What storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out. Maybe it's the calm before the storm.
What's the storm?
Could be the calm before the storm.
What storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
Those vague words about the storm, spoken by then President Trump at the White House on October 5th, 2017, were often cited as the beginning of what we now know as QAnon.
This was at a time when Iran was in the news.
Thank you, everybody.
There was a lot of tension around relations between the United States and Iran, so a lot of focus on that. And the president said something that was cryptic and strange about a coming storm, and how this moment was the calm before the storm. And the reporters in the room sort of seized on that with Iran in mind and asked sort of, what storm, Mr. President, what are you talking about? And he was very sort of, you'll see, wait and see.
Q really took off after this remark that President Trump made. They interpreted that as a coded signal that something called the storm was coming. And the storm, in their minds, was this day of reckoning.
And that became one of the foundational bits of lore for Q, which started posting on an image message board a couple weeks later.
On October 28th, someone who later called themselves Q Clearance Patriot wrote on an online forum called 4chan, which was known for anonymous or anon posts. Q Clearance Patriot claimed to have a high-level security clearance called Q Clearance, which comes from the Department of Energy.
This was not the first Anon that had claimed to be a high-ranking government insider on 4chan, but Q Clearance Patriot said, basically, I am a member of the Trump administration, I have this Q clearance, this high-level intelligence clearance, and I am providing you with secret information about what's really happening behind the scenes in Washington.
Over the months and years, Q continued posting vague clues, often in the form of questions and riddles. They became known as Q drops. Followers would then spend days and weeks trying to decipher the meaning of them. Certain catchphrases became commonly used among believers.
Where we go one, we go all.
There's sort of a rallying cry that is, where we go one, we go all, which is an expression of solidarity.
They call each other patriots, almost universally.
There's this reference to the calm before the storm, this idea that the storm is this moment when a mass number of arrests will take place.
And everything is sort of in this like military-esque code.
Thank you very much.
So, POTUS is always used instead of calling him President Trump. Or Hillary Clinton in the QAnon drops is never Hillary Clinton, she's always HRC.
There's the Great Awakening, which refers to this period after the storm when Q believers believe there'll be sort of a society-wide spiritual awakening.
There are also things like, enjoy the show would be sort of like watch for fireworks in the coming days.
Similarly is trust the plan.
Trusting the plan is an important part of QAnon belief because there are sometimes that the predictions don't pan out and the things that Q has said would happen don't.
It's not clear if anything Q has predicted has come true. The first post said that Hillary Clinton was about to be arrested. Q predicted other dates when this non-existent global cabal would be exposed. There were supposed to be mass arrests of deep state actors and martial law, all fantasy. But it didn't seem to matter to Q followers. They either ignored the inconsistencies or explained them away.
I know nothing about QAnon.
I just told you.
I know very little. You told me, but what you tell me doesn't necessarily make it fact. I hate to say that. I know nothing about it. I do know they are very much against pedophilia. They fight it very hard.
This was President Trump on NBC News this past October. He repeatedly claimed he didn't know anything about QAnon, but he also praised them, giving Q followers encouragement. These Q supporters at a QAnon conference in Arizona cheered on Trump's words to NBC. Many Q followers believe Trump signals his support for them in public with hidden messages and signs.
So QAnon believers, they study all of Trump's public appearances with this kind of extreme rigor, looking for these tiny little details, these signs that he supports them, that he's listening to them, that he's sending them coded signals. So for example, every time he says the number 17 or uses it in any way, they take that as a sign that he's talking to them, because Q is the 17th letter of the alphabet.
17.
I've heard QAnon believers saying that, Trump makes these signs with his hand when he talks that kind of look like he's doing a Q.
Siddharth Jadeja was a true believer in QAnon. Now he says he's changed his mind. Says many Q followers' faith in Trump is limitless.
Did you really believe that President Trump was working to attack this global cabal of Satan-worshiping pedophiles? I mean, you believed he was actually deeply involved?
Yeah, of course I believed that. I believed that he'd been chosen by military intelligence, that he was an avatar, right? There are people out there who believe he's a time traveler. There's people out there who believe he's Jesus, So, yeah, 100%.
Brian Ogstad continues to believe Trump is fighting a battle against evil.
There has always been this great hate for Trump because they know he's not on the inside. Looking back on it, like I said, hindsight, because I stayed away from politics, but now I'm trying to connect all these dots. They've hated him from day one. They've gone after him for day one, and why? So that's my question. Why? And so then to me, in my mind, that's why. He's trying to shut down child trafficking all over the world.
How did a conspiracy cult based on lies and bizarre accusations grow so fast? It wouldn't have happened without the help of social media.
The way in which it went mainstream is they turned these concepts into memes and things that were very shareable on sites like Facebook and Twitter that captured people's interest. There's a reason they call it a rabbit hole, right? So the cause, in particular, Save the Children. They took that slogan and co-opted it and made it feel comfortable for a mainstream person to be like, yes, I want to help save the children. They take one click and then they learn some things and they click another and they may do some searches, and all of a sudden they've spent hours and they have gone down this rabbit hole to a place where they've now been exposed to some darker theories that are not as simple as the meme they may have initially found.
Experts say the Save the Children hashtag proved to be a powerful recruitment tool for QAnon. So-called Save the Children rallies have popped up all over the country.
The fact that you guys are attacking us and making us look like we're crazy when we're just trying to save some children pisses me off.
The irony is that many QAnon followers have turned against the nonprofit organization Save the Children, which actually works around the globe to do exactly what Q followers claim they're fighting for, saving children from danger.
Well, the problem with Save the Children, and I went to my favorite store the other day, TJ Maxx, and I told them I will no longer be shopping there because they promote Save the Children, and Save the Children is owned by Bill Gates, who is a pedophile, who is being investigated for serious human rights violations. And, it's just really, really sad that a lot of people don't know that and don't know what's really going on.
Bill Gates doesn't own Save the Children. Like all the other QAnon conspiracies, the accusations against him are completely baseless.
So you're a QAnon follower?
100%.
The idea of saving children, even though it's not actually happening within QAnon, could be one reason why so many women have joined in on the conspiracy. 2 Terror expert Mia Bloom says that often women are first drawn into QAnon through popular social media sites.
We actually know that the population of believers in QAnon are disproportionately female. And part of the reason that that's the case is the algorithms in Facebook that would suggest QAnon groups were people who were interested in essential oils, natural birth, perhaps even yoga. The Facebook algorithms would then suggest other groups that were QAnon affiliated. And so the women started joining QAnon in greater numbers, and people's Facebook feed or their Instagram feed began to be populated by all this QAnon material. Once the QAnon people hijacked the hashtag Save the Children, that's when you started to see more and more women.
Facebook ended up restricting the use of the Save the Children hashtag because of QAnon. Some experts say there are some similarities in the method of recruiting women between QAnon and the terror group ISIS.
I spent many years studying all the jihadi groups. It's this understanding that women are the primary drivers. Not only will they ensure that the men stay in the movement, but of course they raise the kids with those beliefs. And so if you want to ensure the longevity of a terrorist group, you make sure that the women are on board, and they will teach the children to be as radical as their fathers and not sort of move away from the movement. The other thing that's really similar, when you look at the way that ISIS was able to get lots of women from the West, so they recruited young girls or girls in their 20s. The way they did that was, did you want to help the orphans in Syria? And so of course the women wanted to help the orphans. And this is, again, so similar to Save the Children. It's this way of capitalizing on women's maybe inherent altruism, that they're doing something good, that they think that they're helping, that it's not coming from this radicalization place where I want to kill people. It's coming from a place where I want to help people.
We see a huge presence of Q believers on Instagram, for example, where a lot of young women are really into it. There's a big sort of overlap with mommy blogs and Q support.
Donnie O'Sullivan has been following QAnon for the past year for CNN. He shows us how easy it is to stumble onto possible QAnon groups by simply searching on Instagram for Save the Children.
So this is what Instagram does now. Save the Children. Are you looking for information about Save the Children? If you're looking for information about the humanitarian organization, visit their website. See posts anyway. Democratic Socialists of America. So it's like, you know, what does socialism, the Democratic Socialists of America, have to do with Save the Children? The whole thing is they're trying to tie it all to pedophilia. You don't see the real Save the Children logo anywhere there. You don't see the real information of actually helping that organization anywhere there.
Ashley Vanderbilt lives in South Carolina with her daughter. She says she became a QAnon believer after watching pro-Trump videos on TikTok, which then began suggesting QAnon conspiracy videos for her to watch.
I started liking a lot of Trump posts and things that were anti-Biden, and so the algorithm must have just brought that kind of stuff to me.
She says she would spend hours online at night reading about QAnon theories and believing them, no matter how crazy they might have sounded.
They would drink children's blood because of adrenochromes or something. But to get the adrenochromes, they have to torture the children. I mean, I have a 4-year-old, and I just was like, I can't imagine. Who can think of that? And they said it's when they're in pain and they're, you know, screaming, it's that adrenaline is up, and that's when they drank that blood, is because it does something. I don't know what it does for them, but that's what they did.
If you studied adrenochrome, it's just to, right, they want to scare the bejesus out of them and torture them and torment them to raise the spike in the adrenaline, which makes the blood much better for them to then ingest, or, you know, however they put it into their system.
Brian Ogstead takes the adrenochrome fantasy a step further.
I saw a post recently you put on Instagram that Google is part of a Luciferian cult, so they're part of the cabal. You've also said
Absolutely.
that Google Chrome is actually a reference to adrenochrome.
I believe so. And here's another quote. Here's a quote from Q. Like I said, I don't really follow Q, but I listen, I see the words, and then I think, well, that does make sense. And one of the things that Q said was, when does a coincidence cease to be a coincidence? So yeah, I mean,
the fact that Google uses the word Chrome,
the
that to you means adrenochrome.
Well, yes, and if you look at the the processing unit that from Cisco that they use was called Adreno. So you got the processing system Adreno, you got the Google system called Chrome, you got Adrenochrome, you got 666 in their little thing, which is all-seeing eye in the middle. I mean, like I said, coincidence.
You believe in the Google symbol that there's a 666?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why would a company, though, if they are part of a secret cabal, why would they be naming products after key elements of what's supposed to be secret about, I mean, a chemical that allegedly is gotten from the blood of children that they're drinking?
Well, I think that's a good question. And I can only answer that with what I know or what I see. And one is their arrogance, that they're never going to get caught, and that no one can do anything, even if they find it out. And then 3, they're stupid, because it's all out. It's all coming out. One of the other things Q said is their downfall will be their symbolism. And I think that's true, because the symbolism is everywhere.
But this supposed symbolism is fake. Look closely at what Ogstad is claiming to be the satanic symbol 666 hidden in the Google Chrome icon. These white lines that make it appear to look like the number 6 don't actually exist. They appeared to be added in by someone who tried to make it look like the number 6. Just another example of a conspiracy based on a lie. But what is it about the postings from Q that drew so many people in, especially during a pandemic?
Let me ask you a question, America. Let me ask you a question. This goes out to all America. The so-called doctor of the world, Dr. Fauci, okay? I haven't heard this guy mention drinking a glass of orange juice, not even taking a Flintstone vitamin. The guy hasn't mentioned the immune system in 6 months. Wake up! Wake up!
This QAnon supporter clearly isn't a fan of public health officials like Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Mr. Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci?
Neither are a lot of other Q supporters. Many view Dr. Fauci and the coronavirus pandemic itself as part of yet another conspiracy. To them, China, the World Health Organization, and of course the so-called deep state are involved in a secret plot against America with a virus that may or may not be real.
The pandemic was sort of a gift for QAnon in a way, because it presented this whole other subset of conspiracy theories for Q to gobble up, which is what this conspiracy does best, right? It sort of eats up all of the other conspiracy theories out there. But the universe of Q believers also seized on this idea that the pandemic was fake, or that the United States and China secretly worked together to unleash it because of the quote-unquote deep state.
Thank you very much.
Fauci became a central villain among the Q crowd, in part because there was a clip early on in the pandemic where President Trump had a press briefing and Fauci was behind him, and President Trump said something referring to the deep state, and you see Fauci standing behind him sort of going like this.
So does anybody have any questions?
Like trying to suppress a chuckle. And that was all over the Q networks, with people seizing on Fauci as being against Trump in their view. There's also a long-standing conspiracy theory that is against scientifically proven to be effective vaccines. So the anti-vax movement sort of very easily fell into the Q universe when the pandemic began.
Fear is powerful. It shouldn't be surprising at all that the people who believe in QAnon also tend to be anti-vax or anti-mask, or they were trying to get the country to open up sooner than was readily available or safe by medical standards. And so there's this overlapping nature of QAnon where these complementary or adjacent conspiracies are folded into QAnon, so that QAnon represents not just one conspiracy, but several conspiracies that are connected to it.
The pandemic helped fuel the Q cult, partly because people simply had more time at home, not much else to do but turn to the internet. Former QAnon believer Ashley Vanderbilt says she was laid off after the pandemic hit, which she believes made her more vulnerable to falling into the cult.
Well, I think I spent a lot of time this year isolated from everybody. You know, I've just been home a lot. I've lost my job last April in 2020, and so I'd sit at home a lot. I was super depressed. I mean, just because you're not around anybody. And I think in a way I probably lost touch with a little bit of reality and that almost like common sense. And so I'm not so much embarrassed for what I believed, but I mean, I feel foolish. I just feel like, how could you have done that? How could you have thought that way and gone to the extreme with it?
I think combined with the social isolation that the pandemic brought on, the stress of everything associated with the pandemic, people lose their jobs, people are scared of this virus that you can't see, you can't control.
Whatever happens, we're totally prepared.
People are not sure who to trust for the information about the virus. You know, the president says one thing, the CDC says something else, and that created a lot of fear and a lot of stress on people. And we know that when people experience certain stressors, that can be a pathway to radicalization. As people were spending more time on their computers, away from their friends, they're not doing a happy hour anymore, they're not going to the Little League game, they're just at home and they're online a lot. And they're searching for answers and they're looking for ways to gain control in a world that seems completely out of control. And that's when you started to see kind of this exponential growth of QAnon and the polls starting to indicate that it had gone mainstream.
How Q supposedly communicates also helped fuel its growth. Postings, which are called Q drops, are often cryptic in nature. They're vague, seemingly presented as puzzles that loyal followers can solve or decode.
Once a new Q post appears, there are these apps, these Q drops apps that people use to get alerted every time. And immediately they'll take screenshots and post them in Facebook groups and chat rooms, and they'll start trying to kind of decipher it and make sense of it all to figure out how it connects to the larger QAnon narrative.
These clues that Q leaves are written in really ambiguous and cryptic terms, very riddle-like, which is part of what people are drawn to, right? Like, people want to sort of do the research. You hear this again and again. People want to do their own research and pore over these clues and interpret them.
This is an example of a Q drop from September 2018.
It starts with an all-caps line that says, "Panic in DC." And then it says, "LL talking equals truth, reveal, tarmac, BC." So this is basically a reference to Loretta Lynch, the former Attorney General under President Obama, and some sort of truth that Q is saying was revealed in a conversation with BC, which is Bill Clinton, on a tarmac. Then it continues, "LL talking equals truth, reveal, Comey, HRC email case." Comey is, of course, James Comey, the former FBI director. LL talking truth equals truth, reveal, Hussein instructions, HRC email case. LL talking equals truth, reveal, Brennan, no-name cord to frame POTUS. FISA equals start. FISA brings down the house. When do birds sing? Q. So as with most Q drops, this one doesn't have a sort of clear hint or narrative. It's coded, it's sort of written in this cryptic language. But basically the message that people take from this is that there's some nefarious link between Loretta Lynch, the former Attorney General, this Clinton email case, John Brennan, the former CIA director, and a plot against President Trump. When do birds sing is sort of a cryptic reference to, like, you know, when do people confess to their crimes? When does the storm happen and this house of cards that this global cabal has erected come crashing down? So when you're part of QAnon, you are not just absorbing things that people tell you. You are out there, you are digging, you are trying to put together pieces of this puzzle, and then you are congratulated for finding stuff. It's almost like a video game.
A video game based on lies, played by potentially hundreds of thousands of followers or more around the world.
One thing that I learned when I started spending a lot of time in QAnon chat rooms and forums and Facebook groups is that this is really social for them. This is a kind of collaborative, truth-seeking effort, and it's a community. They make friends with other QAnon believers. They congratulate each other on their birthdays, and they wish each other happy holidays, and they talk about how their grandkids are coming to visit next week. And for a lot of believers, this has become their primary social life. And so they get more out of it than just politics. They get affirmation, they get friendships, they get meaningful sort of missions that they feel they can be a part of.
What surprised me was the number of people I met who, yes, they were pro-Trump, but more than that, they were deriving this sense of spiritual satisfaction from Q. And there was a lot of sort of, I heard from people that they felt a sense of peace or serenity in their lives that they didn't have before they started getting into Q. And that's what really led me to understand that this isn't a political movement. It isn't only a conspiracy theory, but really it takes on the contours of a baby religion born on the internet. It raises questions sort of about what's a religion versus what's a cult versus what's a conspiracy theory versus what's a mass delusion. And I think you see pieces of all of those things in Q.
Siddharth Jadeja says he was a QAnon follower for almost 2 years. But he says after watching Q's predictions repeatedly fail and realizing Trump's so-called signals to QAnon weren't signals at all, he's now realized it was all made up.
I'd say that Q is kind of like Jesus and Trump is kind of like the God figure, right? For me personally, the part that was really appealing was that in a sad kind of way, this kind of gave me some joy and a sense of optimism. I was looking at the world and it was just so chaotic and everything was so negative and there were just bad things happening all the time. And the idea that we could somehow make the world a better place for all of humanity just really gave me a sense of optimism. So that was the irony of the situation, that my life was so sad and I was so sad that I was looking to Q for joy, as well as a sense of belonging, just like any cult. They prey on the vulnerable and the disaffected. That's exactly what happened.
Considering some believe they were fighting to save children, it's no surprise this online conspiracy could result in real-world violence.
Q is a real thing. They're killing our children and using their blood and stuff and using their blood sacrifices in Hollywood.
The bizarre and false theory that a global cabal of Satan-worshipping Democratic leaders and celebrities are trafficking in children and harvesting their blood is at the core of the QAnon conspiracy theory. But there are many other far-out claims made by Q followers.
It is branched in many different directions, and now you'll find QAnon believers talking about everything from the Illuminati to aliens in Area 51 to control of the banking system by George Soros and other shadowy, mostly Jewish financiers they believe are in power.
I've heard everything from the idea that John F. Kennedy Jr. is still alive and secretly supports Trump to John F. Kennedy Jr. was assassinated by Hillary Clinton.
Okay, well, when it comes to Hillary Clinton, all you have to do is look into the emails and the way that she's involved in spirit cooking with Marina Abramovic, who's a known satanic witch. Hillary Clinton is a satanic witch, okay?
You may recognize this guy, the so-called QAnon shaman. This is him at a rally in Arizona 2 days after the election. His name is Jacob Chansley. He's been seen at other Trump rallies as well. On January 6, he was front and center in the attack on the Capitol. Chansley has been arrested and charged for his alleged role in the riots. Prosecutors say, among other things, he obstructed a police officer. They also say he told the FBI that Vice President Mike Pence was a child trafficking traitor. Chansley's lawyer says he wasn't violent and didn't cross police lines.
We have evidence that this is a dangerous conspiracy theory. Most recently on January 6th, when we saw people brandishing Q signs and perpetrating Q's message as they stormed the U.S. Capitol. I mean, there was evidence before that Q was dangerous, but it is abundantly clear now that this is a dangerous and violent movement.
This man running after a Capitol Hill police officer is named Doug Jensen. He was also arrested and charged for his alleged role in the attack. He's wearing a Q shirt with the motto, "Trust the plan." He's pleaded not guilty to all the charges against him.
We've seen lots of incidents of violence and law-breaking related to QAnon and inspired by QAnon. There have been murders, there have been kidnappings, there have been threats against lawmakers in the name of Q.
In March 2019, this man allegedly shot and killed a reputed mafia member in New York City. He told his lawyer that the victim was a member of the deep state working to bring down President Trump. At his arraignment, he flashed a Q symbol that he drew on his hand. He's been charged with murder and has pleaded not guilty. Another Q follower caused an armed standoff near the Hoover Dam in June of 2018, demanding the release of a government report on Hillary Clinton's emails. He pleaded guilty to a terrorism charge. Though some in the Republican Party have spoken out against QAnon, others seem to be trying to appeal to its followers. In August, the Texas GOP started using the slogan, "We are the storm." The same term is used by Q followers. The Texas GOP denies any connection to QAnon, but have continued to use the term even after the attack on the Capitol. Nearly 24 Republicans across the country who've engaged with the QAnon conspiracy ran for office in the 2020 election. Marjorie Taylor Greene is from Georgia.
Vote Marjorie Taylor Greene for Congress. Now, Q is a patriot. He is someone that is very much loves his country, and he's on the same page as us, and he is very pro-Trump, okay? Now, he appears to have connections at the highest levels, all right? He's posted many things that seem to verify that he is the real deal.
Lauren Boebert is from Colorado.
Everything that I've heard of Q, I hope that this is real.
Both women are now serving in Congress. Boebert has since said she's not a follower of QAnon. And after calls for her to resign from office, Greene has now said publicly she doesn't believe in QAnon.
I stumbled across something, and this was at the end of 2017, called QAnon. Well, these posts were mainly about this Russian collusion information. A lot of it was some of what I would see on the news at night, and I got very interested in it. Later in 2018, when I started finding misinformation, lies, things that were not true in these QAnon posts, I stopped believing it.
But even after 2018, when she said she stopped believing,
are you still involved with Q Anonymous?
She was still pushing QAnon conspiracies and defending QAnon believers.
I think it's unfair to criticize regular American people that just are looking things up on the internet.
Marjorie Taylor Greene has successfully fundraised off the controversies surrounding her affiliation with QAnon. Others who are referred to as QAnon influencers have also profited off the rise of this conspiracy.
It's probably important to make the distinction between the rank and file followers.
Q. Look it up.
It's a community. And people who were either influencers for QAnon or the people who are making a lot of money from QAnon materials. The influencers sometimes were selling Q-branded materials or Q books, or they were diverting funds to stop the steal.
Online retailers like Amazon and Etsy have recently made moves to take down QAnon-themed products. But there's still many other places to find the merchandise. Still money to be made off the QAnon cult.
Q is everybody. You don't know who particularly Q is. Q is a movement, okay? It says think for yourself. It doesn't tell you to follow one leader. You can think about what you want with Q. But I follow the facts and I follow information, and I think for myself and as American.
Q still is, at this point, an anonymous message board poster. It's not known who he or she is, or even if it's a single person or a foreign government attempting to sow division.
The really interesting thing for me is that I've talked to a lot of QAnon believers who say, it doesn't matter to me who Q is. The identity of this person, or even whether it is the same person all along, seems to have become secondary in this case. It's sort of like they're curious who it is, but they would almost rather not know because it allows them to preserve the illusion.
The more people I talked to who really deeply believed in it just didn't care, because it was sort of like, well, what if you find out tomorrow that it's a hoax and the person who's Q admits it was all made up? And I heard again and again and again from people who just said, it doesn't matter who Q is, this is so much bigger than Q.
What's it like to be named by Q? Find out what happened after Q posted this question: who is A. Cooper?
You actually believe that I was drinking the blood of children?
What's going on with Tom Hanks?
So you guys just want me to explain everything today, huh? Dude, it's all suspicion. That's suspicion.
How do you know that Tom Hanks is...
How do you not know? You're reporting a non-fact.
Tom Hanks is just one of dozens of celebrities that Q supporters have accused of being part of the so-called global cabal. There's no evidence, of course, no reason at all to believe these sick claims, but that doesn't matter to believers in the cult of QAnon.
But you have him on your side. You're calling him a pedophile.
Yes.
But you don't know that for...
How did they get to that position of power?
Some of the celebrities who've been attacked by QAnon had been critical of President Trump in some way. Others were simply thought to be Democrats.
So Q has explicitly called out members of this global cabal, who they say, include people like Tom Hanks and Chrissy Teigen, and these people are selected not randomly, but because people find things, references in their social media posts, photos of them from a decade or two ago, or with Bill Clinton, someone who's at the heart of this theory. They will turn these people into enemies, and they will viciously harass people. Once they fixate on a target, then they all go on social media, they swarm that target. I've been the target of it. It's happened to a lot of reporters, political pundits, celebrities, and it's very unpleasant to be on the receiving end of that. It's a picture of me.
Q first posted about me November 5th, 2017, asking the question, who is A. Cooper? This came 2 days after I was on the air reporting about indictments in the Russia investigation. Once mentioned by Q, the followers of this conspiracy cult went to work, inventing a bizarre story about my life. According to Q followers, my mom, Gloria Vanderbilt, was a Satanist. They pointed to this photo taken when I was about 6 years old. That Mexican folk art on the wall behind us is the Virgin Mary with Christ, but they said it was satanic, and the Christ figure was a child being sacrificed. They also claimed I'd been molested, likely in this empty pool in an old mansion in what Q followers said was my mom's house. It's actually an old Vanderbilt estate in Asheville, North Carolina, that neither I or, as far as I know, my mom had ever been to. Q followers posted this illustration they said was me as a child being abused in that pool. The CIA had allegedly trained me as a super secret CIA agent infiltrating the media as part of a 1960s era CIA program allegedly called Operation Mockingbird. The confirmation? According to Q supporters, the necklace my mom wore in that old photo looked like it could be from Guatemala. The CIA had supported a coup in Guatemala in 1954. I was also called a pedophile. Phony flight logs purported to be from convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein's airplane appeared online with my name and dozens of other well-known people. It's all made up, of course, but QAnon supporters seem to believe it, or at least use it to try to harass me. Jatarth Jadeja was a believer until June 2019.
Did you at the time believe that high-level Democrats and celebrities were worshiping Satan, drinking the blood of children?
Anderson, I thought you did that, and I would like to apologize for that right now. So I apologize for thinking that you ate babies. But yeah, 100%.
You actually believe that I was drinking the blood of children?
Yes, I did.
Was it something about me that made you think that?
It's because Q specifically mentioned you, and he mentioned you very early on. He mentioned you by name, and from there, if he also talked about, like, for example, like your family. But yeah, and I'm gonna be honest, like, people still talk about that to this day. There were posts about that just 4 days ago. So some people thought you were a robot.
You really believed this?
I didn't just believe that. I, at one stage, believed that QAnon was part of military intelligence, which is what he says. But on top of that, the people behind them were actually a group of fifth dimensional, intradimensional, extraterrestrial, bipedal bird aliens called blue avians. I was so far down in this conspiracy black hole that I was essentially picking and choosing whatever narrative that I wanted to believe in.
Siddharth Jadeja says he no longer believes in QAnon, but there are hundreds of thousands, some even suggest millions of others, who are still trusting the plan. And still trusting that members of this so-called cabal, including me, will be executed, even if Donald Trump is no longer in the White House.
I can't prove anything about you, Anderson. All I know is there's a lot of strange coincidences.
Do you have any regrets about your presidency?
When President Trump left the White House on January 20th, many QAnon believers were stunned. Nothing they'd been promised had come to pass. We were promised arrests, exposures, military regime, classified documents. Where is it? One online message read.
It was phenomenal to watch what was happening online. There was a complete meltdown of QAnon followers. There was this belief that while they weren't able to stop the election from being certified by the Congress, what was going to happen next was President Trump was going to declare martial law at the last minute. He was going to issue a national emergency broadcast alert that electricity was likely to go down, water was likely to go down, so everybody needed to stockpile food and water and be able to survive in the winter for a couple of weeks. And then President Trump would rightly take his place for his second term as president, and there would be no President Biden.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear.
But as we've seen with many QAnon followers in the past, false predictions don't deter them. The conspiracy cult's beliefs simply evolve. Many are now claiming Trump will make a return to the White House. Others claim he's still secretly running the government. One 4chan user wrote, "Anything that happens the next 4 years is actually President Trump's doing." It's now harder to find QAnon content on the internet. Major social media companies have decided to crack down. Twitter says it's banned more than 70,000 accounts for promoting Q. Facebook said since August they've removed more than 18,000 profiles and more than 27,000 Instagram accounts for violating its policies against QAnon. But there are other platforms where QAnon is thriving.
What we've seen is since after the insurrection, when Twitter and Facebook really started kicking off a lot of QAnon accounts, we've seen a lot of QAnon followers move to platforms like Gab. Gab's been a social media platform that's been around for a few years. It's pretty much one of the most hate-filled platforms out there. So this one QAnon group on Gab called QAnon and the Great Awakening, it has more than 200,000 members. And if you're in it, you basically live in a parallel universe. If we go through it here, people are posting to this group basically every few minutes, sometimes every few seconds. Everything in this group is basically designed to grab you further and further, drag you further and further down the QAnon rabbit hole. You know, it's sort of perfect example of what you see in groups like this, right? It purports to be a picture from a live stream of the White House, probably at some hour of the very late at night when maybe the lights at the White House are turned off, maybe those front floodlights, or it also might be an image that has just totally been doctored. But you can see there, the guy is saying, looks like the lights are out at the White House yet again for like so many days in a row. Q did say something about if the lights go out, please know we are in control. So what you can see there is that this is a person who is really trying to cling on to that belief that QAnon is something real. And this was just posted, you know, several weeks after Biden has been inaugurated.
Trump leaving the White House hasn't changed Brian Ogstad's belief that members of the cabal will be exposed and even executed.
But you believe that there will be public executions of people in this cabal. And if I was in it, I would be publicly executed.
If Anderson, like I said, it's if, like you're saying you're not, and you told me you're not, and I'll take your word for it. I don't have any proof, but I would say anybody who is high up should be shown to the world via public executions. I can't prove anything about you, Anderson. All I know is there's a lot of strange coincidences, like the imagery above your mother's bed, the sack. You know what I'm talking about. The imagery above your mother's bed with you and your brother sitting on the bed that has the satanic imagery with this child or person being sacrificed. I mean, there's that.
My mom was raised, she was baptized both Catholic and Episcopalian by competing relatives, and she liked folk art. That's an old Mexican folk art representation of the Virgin Mary, the sacrifice part of it, because I still have this thing in my basement, it's in my mom's stuff, is Jesus Christ after he's been taken off the cross. He's an adult, he's laying there with the wounds. Yeah. So it's the Virgin Mary looking over Christ off the cross, but it's interpreted as being a satanic child sacrifice. Yeah, I got you. Like I said, I backed off a lot of that. Even like I said, I've sent a lot of crazy messages like this because it does. You guys, you can imagine when you see all this stuff, it can, and babies getting killed, it can make you kind of angry. So yeah, I did also, right? I did apologize to you after that, and I because I can't prove any of it. I don't know if it's true, but there's certainly things like that I guess were misconstrued, we could say.
Whatever Brian Ogstad thinks about me now, he's still convinced there is a global cabal out there, and he thinks some of them have already been arrested.
You think it's possible Hillary Clinton's already been arrested, there's a double of her out there, same with Biden, that Biden's been overthrown, but there's a double of him?
I think those are possible. I really do. And like I said, you don't have to. And I know it's like I said. I told you before we started this. A lot of the stuff I'm going to say sounds crazy. It sounds crazy to me when I say it out loud. But if you go and you look at the evidence that you can find, you see that okay, this is plausible, and I can't think of any other excuse for why she would still be walking around. Her,
but is that really plausible?
The Bushes.
Where in life have you ever seen a body double for months on end that works? I mean, I know Saddam Hussein allegedly had a body double, here or there.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, maybe because most of these people just do brief appearances. You know what I mean? It's not like they stand out and go out in public and. I mean, I honestly, I interviewed Biden a couple nights ago, face to face, and I got to tell you, it was Joe Biden. Okay.
Trying to be rational with Ogstad, as with many conspiracy theorists, doesn't get you very far. Last I heard from him, he told me he was praying for me.
I'm really hopeful, Anderson, that everything you just told me is true. I'm hopeful, I'm hopeful that it is true, and I'm hopeful that you're actually one of the good guys in all of this. That you're actually, working behind the scenes to help, goodness win over evil.
Ashley Vanderbilt considers herself to be one of the lucky ones for making it out of QAnon. She says in the end, the continued online chatter about Trump's return to power just didn't make any sense.
I already started seeing posts of, well, this is how it was supposed to happen. The inauguration was supposed to happen. Treason has been committed now. And, putting out that hope that Trump would still come back. And I looked at my fiance and he's like, you need to stop watching those videos. And I was like, I don't think I'm gonna believe it. And he's like, okay, why? And I was just like, for some reason, reasoning and logic came to me. And so I was just like, it doesn't make sense that a president could be sworn in. It doesn't make sense that all of this is happening and then all of a sudden Trump's gonna come back March 4th and it's gonna change. I was like, it doesn't seem right.
There are, however, plenty of others still out there in the U.S. and around the world who think it does seem right. Some experts fear they may migrate over to other fringe extremist groups.
Here's the dangerous part. The white supremacist and the anti-government extremist started to realize that this was likely to happen after January 6th. They weren't able to stop Biden from being approved by the Congress, and so there was this disheartening moment for many of Trump supporters as well as QAnon supporters. So you started to see the white supremacists come up with recruitment techniques, and they started posting on their sites to educate other white supremacists on how to approach a disheartened QAnon adherent, how to approach a disheartened Trump supporter. They have to feed their grievance, make sure that they stay angry, make sure that they put blame on the system, on the government, on Trump itself. So they're looking to recruit.
The hard part about leaving QAnon, though, is once you've started to see the world in the way that QAnon followers see the world, as a series of lies being told by elites, it becomes very hard for them to trust in sort of mainstream authorities ever again. They sort of have this idea that the knowledge that they're being fed is not real, and that they have to go looking for their own sources of truth.
And many of those sources are now heralding a new day of reckoning close at hand.
Trump will take office as the 19th president of the United States on March 4th under the restored republic.
Executions will be happening on March 5th. That's a big statement. And I'm really looking forward to it.
QAnon supporters have been waiting for this imaginary global cabal of pedophiles to be exposed and punished since the beginning of the movement. And some still cling to this belief and are preparing themselves now for the 4th and 5th of March.
The big belief and the thing you see a lot of chatter about right now, is this idea that on the 4th of March, Trump is going to come back, and that on the 5th of March, there will be public executions of Trump's political enemies.
These new dates are based on a law from 1871 that established a government for Washington, D.C. Conspiracy theorists incorrectly believe that any president who was sworn in afterwards is illegitimate. The last legitimate president in their eyes was Ulysses S. Grant, who was sworn in on March 4th, 1869. They now believe Donald Trump will return and be sworn in on that day next week as the real 19th president of the United States. Nearly 5,000 National Guard troops will remain in Washington, D.C. through March 12th, partly because of fears of QAnon violence on the 4th.
Hey, it's your favorite truth seeker, holding the light for everyone out there who's given up hope that Trump is not the president of the United States of America, when, in fact, he is.
These videos are posted on TikTok.
Hey, all you patriots out there, Trump supporters, I just wanted to say this. Keep the faith. I really believe that something is coming, something's coming soon.
TikTok has made moves to ban QAnon content, but it still finds its way onto the site.
People aren't just posting stuff now that says QAnon, They're posting these type of messages. It's all this sort of QAnon adjacent, QAnon world of conspiracy. This is another example, somebody trying to claim that gallows are being built outside the White House, again pushing this whole ridiculous narrative that there's going to be public executions when Trump comes back in March. This scaffolding is actually the press rising where the media was on Inauguration Day. You go into the comments here, and to be fair, even on Gab, even on a platform, which is just full of misinformation, sometimes people will call this stuff out and say, no, that's actually the media. But then other people just go along with it. They just say, yeah, that makes sense. But what we do know is a lot of people read this stuff and they really, really, really believe it.
There have always been conspiracy theories, but never before have they been able to spread so quickly. Just a few clicks can take you down a rabbit hole of deranged, sick fantasies and dangerous beliefs. What the cult of QAnon shows us is that even the most ludicrous and disturbing ideas can find an audience online. And in the real world, the results can be tragic.
I will die for my country and my family and my friends. They ain't gonna win. There ain't nothing else. They ain't gonna win. You don't want none of this.